Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be here and lovely to meet you all. I often introduce myself as the boring banker because people usually don't like talking about money and finance. I'm actually really curious, who has heard of Christian savings? If you sort of raise your hand, okay, there's a few of you, fantastic. Oh, that's good. I think I see ourselves as part of that invisible infrastructure that supports many ministries around the country. People like me, I'm a lawyer by trade, so don't hold that against me. I know we're not very popular, but sort of lawyers and accountants and people like us might seem to have sort of less spiritual roles in the work of evangelism or Christian ministry, but we make up part of that infrastructure that helps churches and Christian charities flourish. So Christian Savings actually turned 60 years old last year, which was really exciting. And essentially our purpose is to see churches and Christian charities flourish. And we do that by providing loans to churches and charities so that they can build buildings, build schools, daycare centres, retirement homes, a whole bunch of things. So typically these organisations can't rock up to a bank and get a loan because the bank says, "Who are you funny people called Christians? We don't want to lend to you." But we know that the church has been around for 2,000 years and it will probably be around for another 2,000 years more. So look, we finance everything from Christian schools. So we've got a Christian school, big Christian school in Hamilton that we're financing at the moment. We've got a big retirement home that's a charity that takes spiritual care of its residents, and also in the Waikato. And we've got church projects all around the country. So we work by issuing term deposits to the public. So anyone can issue term deposits to the public, put their savings with us. People here on the call might be depositors of Christian savings or companies or institutions. And then we take that money and we lend that out to churches and charities. And we're a charity ourselves. So just to give you a sense of how our size, we have about 240 million of loans to churches and charities, and we've got about $290 million under management. So that's both depositors' money that we steward and also shareholders, Christian shareholders who put their money into Christian savings. So just to give you a bit of a taste about what we do, there was a woman in Iran actually who came to faith, and I don't know if you know this, but becoming a Christian in Iran is not a very popular thing. In fact, it's a very dangerous thing. And she got locked up by the authorities for a couple of weeks, and was forced to say that she should never follow faith again. But she couldn't relinquish the faith, and eventually she got beaten up and her shop all smashed up, and she had to flee to New Zealand actually. And when she got to the airport in Iran with her husband and her daughter, they got free refugee passes. The problem being was that there were 2 tickets to Canada and only 1 ticket to New Zealand. And so at the airport, they had to make a very difficult decision as to who was going to go where. And she ended up coming to New Zealand, and her daughter and her husband went to Canada. She landed in New Zealand, but she couldn't find anywhere to live. And she struggled to find any place to have residence. And because of her very long last name, being Iranian, no landlords would take her in. No one would look after her. No one would give her a break, except for one Christian charity. And this Christian charity is on the North Shore. It's called Bays Community Housing Trust, and they provide social housing. On the day that she came in, she walked through the house and she had a translator with her, and she just burst into tears. And the manager there, his name's John, was a bit confused why this lady was crying so much walking to these brand new houses. She said, I had a vision last night, and she was talking through the interpreter, saying, hey, look, I had this vision in which Jesus came to me and said, the place that you're going to visit tomorrow is the place where you can call home. And he was really blown away by that. And that house that she walked into was a house that we had financed. And so that gives you a bit of a taste of some of the fruit of what we do. And whilst we sit behind spreadsheets and calculators all day and do all this sort of boring accounting and legal work, the fruit of what we do is seen in that story, where a Christian housing provider who would not get the same level of service or compassionate finance that we provide was able to really transform this lady's life. And after 5 years, it took her 5 years to get that place, she was able to reunite with her daughter and her husband. So it's one of our favourite stories we like to tell, as it really gives you a flavour of what Christian charities are out there doing and the name that they represent. And that charity had come out of Long Bay Baptist Church, and they had built a building through borrowing funds from us, and they'd also borrowed funds from us to build a childcare centre as well. So you can sort of get the flavour of some of the projects that we're involved in. And I think in my day job, what really excites me is the potential of the church. Not only do we have all these amazing people like you guys praying every Monday night, and we have amazing discipleship ministries and worship ministries, but we also have amazing assets that geeks like me who are into finance get quite excited about, because when stewarded well, we can really change society for the better. You know, we can house the homeless, we can feed the hungry, we can care for the sick, and we can minister to the lost. And all those things involve assets of some form, often, whether it be a soup kitchen or a stereo or a home. And so I guess in my work in our mission at Christian Savings, we draw a lot of inspiration from people like the Clapham sect, who made incredible changes to society in places around the world when they put their minds to what can be stewarded in the name of the gospel. So that's sort of the work we do. We've got about 16 staff, all based. Our offices are based in Auckland. I'm based in Tauranga half the time, and great group of Christians who love God and who love the mission of the church. And I bet you that many of you will be involved in many of the ministries that we finance, or might already be clients of Christian Savings. So in terms of prayer points and things to pray about, look, I am genuinely excited by the mission of the church. And what really sits on my heart is the potential for us to represent Christ well, to be the hands and feet of Christ through what we have, through the resources that we have. When you look at the church as a whole, it has over $10 billion of property and assets. And my desire is to see that being stewarded for the glory of God. Not that denominations would get rich or other people would get rich, but we would house the homeless. We would care for people with those resources. So look, I've put a couple of points down there regarding things to pray about in terms of Christian leaders and trustees and professionals who will be the next generation of those responsible for those assets and developing great leaders. And and for leaders also to have a sort of a God inspiration rather than just a human inspiration for what to do. I think there are a lot of challenges facing churches, and if any of you here are trustees or ever been involved in management of any sort, you'll have experienced the headache of paperwork and compliance and all of those sort of dull things that are there for very good reasons. But we live in a very complex world, and especially with the rising interest rates, the media scrutiny on churches, it can be tough for many of those charities out there. So I'd really like to pray for them. Probably the last one that sort of come up in the last week, actually, I didn't anticipate bringing to you guys tonight is a very important prayer point, and that is we cannot keep up with the demand for lending at Christian Savings. So just to give you an example, in 2017 when I started, we had about 100 million of loans. Now we're at 240. So you can see that over the last 6 years we've doubled. And we could keep going, and we just cannot keep up. So the opportunity is that there is not a resource problem. There's enough money within denominations or enough people out there who would want to deposit with us. It's the creating the partnership there. So look, I was talking to God on my drive home from Auckland to Tauranga, and I said, God, sometimes I struggle to trust that you care about these things, that you care about the problems that I'm supposed to be solving, but I'm gonna trust that actually you are a generous God, and that you are a good God, and that you actually care about Christian Savings more than I do, which is hard to believe sometimes. And so I said to God, I would love it for us to not have to turn any churches away. And we are getting to that point where there is so much demand from Christian churches and charities to borrow for amazing projects, schools, community housing, new church builds, but we just cannot keep up with the demand. So if you could also pray that there would be some miracles that happen in the near future, where people would be moved to partner with us, where possible and where sensible, that we would raise enough money through our deposits so that we could keep lending to all these amazing ministries around the country. That is my number one prayer tonight, and I hope that you'll be able to share in that vision.